Hey, this is Matt Cox, and welcome to The Grind. Today I'm going to talk about something that a lot of guys have asked me about, which is basically being on it's federal probation, or, I mean, in my case, it's called supervised release. So here's the way it works. Let's say you're convicted of a crime. Maybe you go to trial and you lose, or maybe you plead guilty because you just can't go to trial. You're just that guilty. The truth is, even if you're not guilty and you go to court, you're probably got, even if you could be just completely not guilty, you probably still have about a 60% chance of being found guilty, maybe even more. So let's say you end up taking a plea, or you end up getting found guilty at sentencing. So after you've done your time, or you're sentenced, let's put it this way: once you're sentenced, the judge will say, okay, you're going to get 10 years. But when you're released, you're going to do 5 years. Basically, prisoners call it paper. So, but they'll call it supervised release. So you're going to get 5 years supervised release, or 3 years supervised release, or whatever your specific judge says you're going to get. And then when you're on paper, it's called a judgment and commitment. You're governed by your judgment and commitment, and the person that's in charge of making sure you follow all the rules is your probation officer. So in my case, I'm currently on what's called supervised release, and which is basically, it's just probation. You have a probation officer, it's just what they call it. So I'm on federal supervised release, and my judgment commitment says that, for instance, in my case, I have to tell them, like, when I first got off, I had to see a court-ordered therapist once a week. I also have to, because I owe restitution, I have an annual financial affidavit that I have to fill out. Every month I have to provide my bank statements for all bank accounts. I'm not allowed to take out new credit of any kind, no new credit cards, new credit lines, nothing like that, not without permission. I have to notify them where I'm going to live. For the first year or so, I had to do there were random urine tests. Even though I don't have a drug case, I had to do random urine tests. So that lasted for about a year. And I also had to pay restitution because I owed almost $6 million in restitution, because I had a bank fraud case. So what happens, the way the restitution is paid back is this: my judgment and commitment says that the light is changing. It's because I don't have a ring light or anything with me, so I'm using basically the TV as my light. And there's a commercial, so I'm changing colors. So I have to pay restitution per my judgment and commitment, and it's always different. It really just depends on what the judge says. And I know guys that owe $5-10 million, and the judge says you have to pay 10% of everything you make over to the government to redistribute to your victims, let's say, assuming you have victims. And in my case, my judge said that I have to pay $150 every single month, no matter what. Anything I make over $2,000 a month, I have to pay 25%. So if I make $2,000, I pay $150. If I make $3,000, I have to pay $400. So I have to pay the $150 plus 25% of the extra $1,000. That comes to $400. If I make $4,000 in a month, that means I have to pay the $150 plus the 25% of the extra $1,000, or plus 25% of the extra $2,000. So that ends up being $650 I would have to pay every month. And they also get to look at my bank statements and my credit report and those sort of things. For instance, when I first got out, I was able to buy a vehicle, but I wasn't able to get a loan. Later, my car was falling apart, and I had to go to my probation officer, and I had to ask her if I could get a new loan, or get a loan, a car loan, trade my car in and get a car loan. She said no. So a few months later, she said no again. So she said no several times. Finally, my car basically broke down, and I explained to her that there was just no way I couldn't have a vehicle. And so she said, okay, you can get a vehicle, but you can't spend more than, I think it was $350 a month. I ended up having to spend a little bit more than that, and she was okay with that. And I ended up getting a new Jeep. So, I got lucky because she really is in complete control of me. For instance, I'm not allowed to leave the Middle District of Florida without permission. And so if somebody dies in Georgia and I need to go to Georgia to go to a funeral, I have to ask. And she can say no. Now, I've been lucky because I've been traveling around the country. I've been to California a couple times. I've been to Puerto Rico. I've been to Pennsylvania. I've been to Texas. I've been all over the place. Utah. So I've been all over the place doing podcasts, and I've been lucky she's allowed me to travel. She's only told me one time that I couldn't travel. So that was the first year. It was pretty tough, but now she's loosened up a little bit. I'm not having to do the random urine tests every month, and I was getting random urine tests once or twice a month at least. I don't have to see a shrink anymore. That got loosened up. What else is going on? Like, let me give you an example. I got lucky, and I ended up getting federal unemployment. I got a chunk of money. Like, I got a nice chunk of money. I forget what it was. It was like $6,000 or $7,000. I forget. But I got a nice chunk of money, and they wanted 25% of it. They wanted 25% of my unemployment. So she and I went back and forth, and I explained, look, I'm going to have to live on this money. There's no chance that I'm probably going to get this money again. There may not be another stimulus package. What are you doing? What happens if I go under? We went back and forth. She came back, and she was like, look, you got to pay $800 at least. So I gave him $800. So, the point is that this goes on like this until I'm off of probation. Now, once I'm off probation, I have 5 years paper. I'm at a year and a little bit over a year right now. So once I'm off of paper, you still have to pay your judgment and restitution, but it becomes a civil judgment, and basically it's between you and a collection agency that collects for the federal government. So then you start all over again. Now, if you don't pay, there's not much they can do because they're going to put a judgment against you. So I'll have a judgment on my credit, and there's not much I can do. Even if I make the payments, they're going to put a judgment on my credit. So then you just have to determine, do you want to pay or do you not want to pay? I'm not sure how I'm going to pay off $6 million. And the judgment's going to attach to me no matter what I do. So I'm not sure what's going to happen at that time. I'll have to figure it out with the collection agency. So let me give you another example. A lot of guys that are on paper, it's like you can get off paper typically at about the halfway point. So if you behave yourself, you haven't been any problems, and the probation officer is like, look, this guy's really not a problem. We don't think he's going to get in trouble. He's doing pretty well. His recidivism rate is low. So what they'll do is they'll quash your paper. They'll take you off your paper. So you could have a 3 years probation and get off in a year and a half if you're good. The problem is, because I owe $6 million, I'm not going to be able to get off paper. If you owe money, then the government doesn't want to let you off paper because they feel like as soon as we let you off paper, you're going to stop paying. And, so they would rather just keep you on paper for the whole 5 years. Now, what happens a lot of times is guys will violate for some reason. They'll get in trouble with the law. They'll get pulled over. They'll fail some urine tests. Maybe they're smoking pot or doing drugs, and they'll fail a couple urine tests. And the probation officer will say, hey, listen, you know what? Your Honor, we're done with this guy. He's just not manageable. He's not supervisable. And they'll throw him back in jail. Maybe he does 6 months, maybe he does 3 months, maybe he does 2 years. And when he gets out, they'll just take him off paper. Now, sometimes they reinstate the paper. I know guys that have gotten out, had, let's say, 4 years paper. They got out, 6 months later, they violate 2 or 3 times. And they come back, and when they go in front of the judge, they go, Your Honor, can't you just send me back to prison for like 6 months and then just quash my paper because I'm not going to stop smoking pot. I'm not going to stop doing drugs. And the judge will be like, fuck, this guy's he's unsupervisable. Like, we can't get him to behave. And they'll say, you know what? All right, we're just going to take you off paper. It's just a waste of time at this point. Well, I had actually thought about doing that. I thought, if I get out, violate, go straight back to prison, I'll go back for a year or so, and I could get them to quash my paper. The problem with that is that won't work with someone who has restitution. If you have a massive amount of restitution, they'll just put you back on paper. They're not going to quash your paper because you're unsupervisable. Now, I know several guys who've done it. For instance, John Boziak, which is a guy I wrote a story about, and he's going to be in a couple of the grind vlogs. And he just did Concrete and MSCS Media, and I'm going to do a podcast with him, and just a bunch of stuff's going on with him. He actually went back to prison, and they quashed his paper. I think he had like a year or two worth of supervised release. He got out. He got in trouble again. They grabbed him. He never got charged, but he knew just interaction with the police can get you violated. And they didn't charge him, but he was afraid that he might get charged, so he took off on the run. And when they caught up with him and he went back in front of the judge said, look, you're gonna get like 6 months, and I'm just gonna quash your paper. You're unsupervisable. You keep taking off and getting caught here and caught there, and you're just not gonna behave. So they quashed his paper. Now, I know lots of guys that have come back to prison. Like, I'll see them leave, they come back, and they're like, yeah, man, it's great, I'm coming back for 6 months, but when I get out, I'm done with paper. So it's not going to work with me. And here's the thing about being on paper is a lot of people don't understand is that you don't really have the same rights as everybody else anymore. Your probation officer can basically violate you for any reason at all. I can be violated for anything. If I'm caught, let's say, hanging out with a felon, they can, if I don't have permission to be around that person, they can violate me, send me back to jail for a year, 18 months. I know a guy who was hiding money, like he was paying his restitution, but he was hiding money. They violated him. He got 18 months. I know a guy, I know about 4 guys, but I'll give you one example. There was this guy, a black guy, super nice guy. He'd been in jail for like 10 years for a drug conspiracy. Well, then he got out. He was in Florida. He got out, and he got caught in a vehicle, like it was an SUV, some SUV. They got pulled over. He was in the car with 3 other guys that were felons. All of them had been arrested for drugs. The car was searched, and when the police searched the car, they found like $30,000 in cash. So finding $30,000 in cash is not illegal. But what the cops did was they didn't charge anybody. They just said, okay, well, we're going to notify your probation officer. So they notified his probation officer. He went back in front of the judge. Probation officer said, listen, the guy was 1, out of the jurisdiction. 2, he was hanging out with 3 other felons, which he's not supposed to be doing. And they all had drug convictions, and $30,000 was found inside of the vehicle. He hasn't been charged with anything. But they used that to go ahead and violate him, and they gave him, I think they gave him like about 18 months, might have been 12 months, but I think they gave him 18 months, and they said, when you get out, we're going to quash your paper. But the fact of the matter is, he had to go back to prison for a year to 18 months, just because he happened to be in the car with 3 other guys. Now look, they were probably doing a drug deal or something, and he just didn't get caught. Okay, I know that. The judge knows that. The point is that they can use pretty much anything. For instance, if I got into a vehicle and the car got pulled over and it was searched, and let's say there was a gun, the guy with me had a gun. One, as being a felon, hanging out with someone that has a weapon, unless that person is willing to say the weapon is his, and didn't even know the weapon was there, I could get charged with something called constructive possession, which means I had constructive possession of a weapon. I didn't have the weapon, but they can allude to the fact or basically tell the judge or the jury or whatever that he had the gun for me. Like that was really my gun, or I told him to carry a gun because I couldn't have it. Like guys will have their girlfriend go get a gun and keep it in her purse, but really that's their gun. You can get 3 to 5 years for that as a felon. You don't even have to have the gun. The point is that if I got into a car, some guy got pulled over, that guy had a gun, The police officer knows I'm on federal probation because it's going to come up, and he notifies my probation officer. My probation officer can say, okay, well, that to me falls under constructive possession. I feel like you're hanging out with someone who's got a gun. You shouldn't be doing that, and I'm going to violate you. You go in front of the judge. Judge says, look, your probation officer says that you're a bad seed and you're hanging out with people that have guns, and I'm sorry, I'm violating you. You're getting 6 more months. My point is this, is that being on federal probation, it's dicey. Like, people think, oh, you can do what you want. They can't tell you this. They can't tell you that. They can tell you anything they want to do. Right now, I have an opportunity to go to the Netherlands to do a shoot. Now, I can't leave the United States. Now, I went to my probation officer and I talked to my probation officer. I said, look, now she's been letting me leave. I went to Puerto Rico. I've been all over the place. I said, I need to go to the Netherlands. These people are going to pay me to participate in a documentary about con men. And it's like 3 or 4 days, but I need to go to the Netherlands. And so she's like, I can't, she can't let me leave the country. She's like, I can't authorize you to leave the country. She didn't have a problem with it. She's like, you're going to have to put in a motion to the judge. So I had to write up a motion. I went, I gave it to my old federal probation office. My old federal defender. I contacted her. I said, look, I did this motion. I want to see if I can leave the United States. I said, what do you think the chances are? She goes, you're about 50-50. And I said, well, you can contact my probation officer. She doesn't really have a problem with it, but she can't authorize it. And she can't really say, hey, she can't take a position. It's not their probation just doesn't take a position on something like that. So my old federal defender is going to file the motion with the judge, and I'm hoping she'll actually maybe talk to the judge or talk to the judge's clerk or something and try and explain the situation. So I have to go through that whole thing, and I still only have a 50-50 chance. There's a good chance that the judge doesn't even let me go. So, and this is the thing, like, I need to do that to make money to pay my restitution. And what am I going to do in the Netherlands? I'm not going to go in there to do anything. I'm going in there to work. I have to notify the consulate when I get there. I have to be told where I'm going to be, where the hotel is, the whole thing. So that's basically what I'm saying. Is like, you really are restricted on where you can go. I can't even move freely throughout Florida without permission. I can't move where I necessarily want to move. I have to notify my probation officer where I'm going to be. She can show up anytime. They can search me anytime they want. So that's really where I'm at. So I mean, it's difficult. It's a difficult situation. For instance, my girlfriend. I had to get permission to date my girlfriend because my girlfriend's a felon. So both our probation officers had to sign off on us dating. And you can imagine that. You meet some girl, you really like her, but she's got a felony, and so you have to go to your probation officer and beg your probation officer and her probation officer to let you two see each other. I mean, you're basically, I'm a child. I'm basically a child, and my probation officer is my parent. And she can tell me to do whatever she wants to tell me, and I have to just take it. I mean, that's just the way it is. And there's just not much there's nothing I can do about it. Look, it's the situation that I put myself in. It's absolutely my fault, but it's stressful. There's just a lot of anxiety involved in it, and you're constantly worried because I know guys that have been violated for next to nothing. So yeah, that's the situation I'm in. I basically have about 4 more years of it, and there's nothing I can do to get off paper. And my probation officer would have to suggest it, and there's no way my judge is letting me off paper. He's just not going to do it. So yeah, subscribe, hit the like button, share this with a friend, watch the whole video twice, watch the commercials, buy a t-shirt, buy a book. I have Frank Amadeo's book, which is It's Insanity. I have John Bozias's book, which is Bent. I have my book, which is called Shark in the Housing Pool. I have Pierre Rossini's book, which is Devil Exposed. What else do I have? Oh, I got the program, which is about me going through the drug program in prison, just basically trying to manipulate the systems to stay at Coleman Low so they didn't ship me off to Miami and I wouldn't be able to see my mom anymore. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and the program's funny, and so yeah, stay tuned, and I appreciate you following, and see ya.